Okay, I know how this sounds. Trust me, I wouldn't believe it either if someone told me. But I swear on everything. I found a camera hidden inside my apartment. And the more I've dug into it, the more it's become clear this isn't just some creepy landlord or a perverted neighbor thing. It's something else. Something much, much bigger. I live alone in a one-bedroom apartment in Baltimore. Been here for about a year now. I work remotely for a cybersecurity firm, mostly network maintenance, nothing fancy. The job pays okay. The neighborhood's not the best, but not the worst. And until about 2 months ago, my life was just normal. Wake up, make coffee, fix bugs, scroll Reddit, crash. Rinse, repeat. It started small. Weird stuff, barely noticeable at first. My desk chair slightly turned, my cereal box facing the wrong way, my bathroom mirror fogged up like someone had showered while I was out. I brushed it off as me being paranoid or forgetful. I mean, who wants to admit they're losing it? Then one night, I got home from grabbing takeout, dropped my keys on the counter, and froze. My TV was on, not playing anything, just sitting on the menu screen. I hadn't turned it on since the weekend. The remote was on the couch. That was the first time I really felt it. That crawling feeling under your skin like you're not alone, like someone's just out of your line of sight. I turned the whole place upside down that night. Checked closets, under the bed, even in the vents. Nothing. But I didn't sleep. 2 days later, I noticed something behind the air vent in the corner near my desk. A tiny black dot, smaller than a dime. I thought it was a dead bug at first, but then I saw the reflection, glass. I unscrewed the vent, pulled it out, and yeah, it was a camera. A small, square, wireless one. Not the kind you buy at Walmart either. This thing was professional. My heart was pounding so hard I felt it in my throat. I took it apart, trying to find a brand or serial number. Nothing. It was scrubbed clean. Whoever set this up knew exactly what they were doing. I called my landlord immediately. He sounded genuinely shocked, said he'd never install anything like that. He even came over the next day to inspect. But here's the thing. When he got there, he didn't seem surprised anymore. He glanced at the camera pieces on my counter, frowned for half a second, and then said something like, "Probably some old security hardware left by the previous tenant." That made no sense. I've lived here a year. I clean that vent every few months. There was no camera before. I tried pressing him, but he brushed it off and left. That night, I barely slept. I covered every vent with tape and shoved towels under the doors. Around 3 a.m., I woke up to a soft click sound from my laptop. The screen lit up by itself. My webcam light blinked once, then off again. I yanked the power cord out, ripped off the tape I'd put over the webcam. I knew enough about remote access to know that wasn't a glitch. Someone had control of my system. I ran a full network scan. There was an unfamiliar IP address connected to my router, one that didn't match any of my devices. I traced it as far as I could. It bounced through 3 VPNs and ended in Washington, D.C. I'll admit, that freaked me out. I disconnected everything and left my apartment at 4 a.m. I sat in my car at a 24-hour gas station, just staring out the window, trying to make sense of it. I kept thinking maybe I pissed off someone from work. I handle sensitive stuff sometimes, but I don't have clearance for any major federal data. I'm a low-level guy. The next morning, I went back. My apartment looked untouched, but I noticed a faint red blinking light near my smoke detector. When I stood on a chair to check, I found another camera. Smaller this time, embedded right in the plastic. That's when I lost it. I tore it out, smashed it, and started checking everywhere else. Light bulbs, outlets, behind picture frames. I found 2 more, both disguised as screw heads. One in the bathroom, one pointing directly at my bed. I called the police. They came, took photos, and one of them told me it was probably a prank. A prank. 3 cameras hidden in professionally modified fixtures? They filed a report but didn't take the devices. Said I could dispose of them. I don't know why, but something about the officer's tone unsettled me. Too casual, like he knew more than he was letting on. After they left, I sent the camera footage and hardware specs to a friend from college, Matt, who works in digital forensics now. He texted me 2 days later saying, "Bro, this isn't consumer tech. This is government grade. Where the hell did you get this?" That's when things really spiraled. My apartment started getting broken into. Subtly. No forced entry, but things moved around again. A photo of my mom on the fridge went missing. My front door lock felt slightly loose one morning. I tried setting up my own hidden cameras, cheap ones from Amazon, but every time I left, They'd stop recording around the same time, between 2 and 3 a.m. I tried contacting building management again, but the number went straight to voicemail. Then the next day, their office was closed for maintenance. And last night, this is where it gets bad. I found a small listening device inside my smoke alarm. Not just a mic, but a transmitter. It wasn't transmitting to Wi-Fi either. It was short-range radio frequency, like military comms tech. I called Matt again, freaking out. He told me to pack a bag and leave immediately. Said he'd explain later. I started shoving clothes into my duffel when I heard something outside my door, like a soft click, and then the faint sound of footsteps moving away. I looked through the peephole. Empty hallway. I'm writing this from a cheap motel about 40 minutes outside the city. I paid cash. I left my phone behind and bought a burner. Matt's supposed to meet me tomorrow. I don't know what's going on, but I know one thing now for sure. Someone's watching me, and they don't want me to find out who. I didn't sleep at all that night in the motel. Every time a car passed by, I tensed up. Every time the pipes creaked, I'd flinch. I kept staring at the door like something was going to bust through it. Matt texted me at 8 a.m. Just a single message. Don't use your real name anywhere. Don't go back to the apartment. He showed up an hour later, looking like he hadn't slept either. First thing he did was sweep the room with a handheld signal scanner. It beeped twice before he even spoke. He found a tiny transmitter in the smoke detector there too. That's when I realized this wasn't just my apartment. They were tracking me personally. Matt yanked it out, wrapped it in aluminum foil, and said, "We can't stay here." I didn't even ask where we were going. I just followed. We drove for about 2 hours west, into the middle of nowhere. Ended up at this rundown cabin his uncle apparently owns near the Appalachian foothills. No Wi-Fi, no cell service, just static radio and the smell of pine. Once we locked the doors, Matt finally told me what he'd found. He'd taken apart one of the cameras I'd sent him. Said the internal board had encryption protocols only used in high-level surveillance. Stuff you'd find in government ops or deep state intelligence work. It wasn't connected to any commercial servers, but to a classified satellite uplink. That means whoever was watching me wasn't some hacker or ex trying to mess with me. They were running something off-grid, with military-grade funding. I sat there staring at him, waiting for him to say it was a joke. He didn't. He said, "Man, you must have stumbled onto something you weren't supposed to see." I told him that didn't make sense. I don't work for any federal branch. I deal with network firewalls and corporate contracts. The only thing remotely sensitive I've touched was a project for a private logistics firm 6 months ago, but that was just data migration. Matt shook his head. "What firm?" I told him the name, Viridian Systems. He froze. Didn't say a word for a full 30 seconds. Then he said, "You need to tell me exactly what you worked on." I told him the basics. Migrating archived data from a private cloud to secure local servers. Nothing that seemed important. But when I mentioned one of the encrypted file clusters labeled Blackbird Ops, confidential, his eyes widened. He said, "That's not corporate. That's government. I've heard of Blackbird." Apparently, it's rumored to be an intelligence sharing program between U.S. agencies and private contractors, a black budget operation for international surveillance. It's one of those things people online talk about, but no one ever confirms. Except now I had touched a piece of it without knowing. Matt started pacing. If you access those clusters, even accidentally, they probably flagged your credentials. Once you logged in from your personal network, you became traceable. That's how they found your apartment. I felt my stomach drop. So they're watching me because I clicked on the wrong folder? He looked at me and said, "Not watching. Cleaning up." The air went cold. He explained that when private contractors mess up and access classified material, they don't always go through legal channels to fix it. Sometimes, they erase the trail completely by erasing the person who made it. I didn't want to believe it. I mean, this is America, right? We have laws, systems, oversight. But the cameras, the bugs, the weird police reaction, it all started to fit together in the worst way possible. We spent the next few hours running through what to do next. Matt suggested we go dark completely. No phones, no cards, no contact with anyone. He said we could head toward a friend of his in Ohio who works off-grid tech countermeasures. I agreed, but before we left, he wanted to scan my laptop one last time. He pulled it out of my duffel and ran a forensic boot. Within 5 minutes, he found an executable running in the background, something disguised as a routine driver update. Except it wasn't a driver. It was a live beacon, a locator. It had been transmitting my GPS data every 6 hours since the day I left my apartment, meaning they knew where I was. Even now, Matt cursed under his breath, yanked the SSD out, smashed it with a hammer, and threw the pieces into the fireplace. He turned to me and said, "We have to go. Now." We packed up fast. Within 10 minutes, we were back on the road, heading west on an empty stretch of highway. I remember glancing in the rearview mirror and seeing a black SUV about a quarter mile behind us. I thought I was just paranoid until it matched every turn we made for the next 40 minutes. We pulled into a gas station and parked by the side. Matt got out, went inside, then came back out through the back door and whispered, "Two guys inside. They're not buying anything. One has an earpiece." I felt every muscle in my body lock up. We didn't even start the car again. We walked out the back, crossed into a field behind the station, and kept walking until we hit a tree line. My legs were burning, my lungs on fire, but we didn't stop. We found another highway and hitched a ride with a trucker who was heading toward Ohio. Told him we were contractors who'd gotten stranded. He didn't ask questions. Thank God. By the time we reached the outskirts of Columbus, it was dark. Matt's contact, some ex-NSA guy named Rick, met us at a diner. Old guy, gray beard, calm voice, like someone who's seen too much. He listened to our story without interrupting once. Then he said something that chilled me. "You're not the first." Apparently, over the past few years, there have been others, contractors, IT techs, low-level analysts, who vanished after accidentally accessing restricted files connected to Project Blackbird. No media coverage, no police reports. Just disappearances. Rick told us if we wanted to survive, we'd have to wipe our digital fingerprints. That meant new identities, burner accounts, cutting off every tie we had. He said he'd help, but it'd take a few days to set up. We're staying in his basement for now. Matt's asleep on the couch. I can't. Every time I close my eyes, I see that blinking red light. I used to think conspiracies were for people who needed something to believe in. Now I'm living inside one. And somehow, I've become the glitch they need to delete. Rick's basement felt like a bunker from some Cold War movie. Bare bulbs, thick concrete walls, and a faint hum from old servers stacked in the corner. He'd converted it into a kind of digital ghosting workshop. No windows, no cell reception, no cameras. Just the three of us, cut off from the world. He made us dump everything electronic. Phones, laptops, smartwatches, even my car key fob, into a metal trash can. He poured acetone on top and lit it. Just stood there watching as everything I owned melted into sludge. "Clean slate," he said. "You want to live? You stop being traceable." I remember staring at the flames thinking, that's it. My life's gone. My job, my apartment, my friends, even my online accounts. Everything tied to my name was burned in that can. For the next 2 days, Rick barely spoke. He worked like a machine, tapping away on a custom-built terminal while Matt helped trace old IP logs. They were trying to find out how deep the breach went, how far the people tracking me had gotten. Meanwhile, I tried to stay sane. The basement smelled like metal and dust. I'd sit on the floor, listening to the faint static from Rick's shortwave radio. Every few minutes, it would buzz with encrypted transmissions, patterns of numbers, and call signs. Rick said most were just background chatter, but sometimes he'd pause and listen closely. Once, after a long silence, he said, "They're moving assets east." When I asked what that meant, he just muttered, "Nothing good." By the third day, Matt called me over. He looked pale. "They've scrubbed you from the system, man. Your employee records, your payroll, even your taxes, they're gone. Like you never existed." I didn't believe him until he showed me. Veridian's employee directory, empty where my name used to be. LinkedIn, blank. My bank app, deactivated. It was like someone had pressed delete on my existence. That's when panic turned to something colder. Anger. Whoever they weren't just watching me. They were erasing me piece by piece. Rick sat us down that night and told us the full story. He used to work for the NSA during the late 2000s, back when they were expanding surveillance under counterterrorism programs. He said Project Blackbird was real, an operation designed to monitor digital communications across borders using outsourced contractors for plausible deniability. But somewhere along the line, it got hijacked. Private firms started using the same systems for espionage, political leverage, and corporate manipulation. The people running it weren't just government officials, they were hybrids. Former intelligence, private CEOs, foreign investors. A shadow network. Rick said Viridian wasn't a logistics firm, it was a shell. The data migration I'd done had probably exposed hidden intel streams connected to this off-the-books network. And that made me a liability. You saw something you weren't supposed to, he said, even if you didn't realize it. And now, cleaning you up is cheaper than explaining the breach. I didn't know what to say. My hands were shaking so bad I had to sit on them. Matt leaned forward. So what now? Witness protection? We go to the press. Rick laughed, a dry, bitter sound. You think the press will print this? They'll think you're schizophrenic. And if you go to the FBI, half the people you talk to probably work for them. That hit hard. The hopelessness of it. Rick started making fake IDs for us. New names, new backstories. Said once everything was ready, we'd head west to a safe zone run by an ex-military contact in Montana. He called it a digital dead zone. A place where no signal travels and nobody asks questions. It sounded insane, but what choice did I have? We were almost done packing when we heard it. The faint rumble of an engine outside. Rick froze, eyes narrowing. The cabin was supposed to be off-grid. No one should have found us. He turned off the lights and motioned for silence. The sound grew louder, then stopped. We waited. Then came a crunch of gravel, footsteps. Multiple. Rick whispered, "Basement." Now. We ducked behind a storage shelf while he grabbed a shotgun from under his desk. The door upstairs creaked open. A beam of light swept across the floor. I could hear my pulse pounding in my ears. Someone moved slowly across the room above, boots creaking on wood. Then, 3 short knocks on the basement door. Rick didn't move. Then a voice, calm, controlled. "We know you're down there. Open the door, and nobody gets hurt." Matt's eyes met mine. We both knew that voice didn't belong to the police. Rick gestured toward the back hatch, a small emergency exit he'd dug into the foundation. We crawled through it silently, one by one, emerging into the woods behind the cabin. The cold air hit my face like ice. We ran. No lights, no talking. Just the sound of our footsteps and branches snapping. Behind us, we heard shouting, then gunfire. Rick stayed behind to cover us. I don't know what happened to him. Matt and I didn't stop running until dawn. We ended up near an abandoned gas station off the highway. He was limping, clutching his side. I wanted to go back for Rick, but Matt grabbed my arm. He knew what he was doing. We can't. I think that was the first time I actually cried. Not the quiet, movie-style tears. The real, ugly kind, when your chest tightens and you can't breathe. We found an old payphone and tried calling 911. The line was dead. No signal. Every tower within range was jammed. That's when I realized they were cutting off the area. Containment. We hijacked a car from a nearby rest stop. Keys were still in the ignition, and drove until we hit Cincinnati. Checked into another cheap motel under our fake names. Matt's bleeding stopped, but he was pale, feverish. He kept saying we needed to find Rick's contact in Montana before they triangulated again. But I couldn't shake this feeling that we were already too late. Because when I turned on the motel TV, every channel was static, except one. It was playing a live feed of the cabin, burned to the ground. And in the corner of the screen, just for a second, I saw a figure standing in the ashes, looking straight at the camera. It was Rick, or someone wearing his face. I don't know how long I just stared at that screen. It felt like hours. The motel room was dead quiet except for the faint hum of the old AC unit. That live feed didn't have a timestamp or watermark, just static edges and the faint crackle of the burned cabin behind Rick, or whoever that was. Matt was half asleep on the bed when I shook him awake. "You need to see this." He sat up, squinting, and then froze. His voice dropped to a whisper. "That's impossible." He rewound the feed, if you could even call it that. And yeah, there it was again. The figure in the ashes, dressed in the same clothes Rick had been wearing that night. But when the face turned toward the camera, it looked wrong. Too smooth, too symmetrical, like a digital mask that hadn't fully rendered. Then the screen glitched, flashed white, and the channel cut to static. Matt didn't say anything for a long time. Finally, he whispered, "They're using facial replication." I didn't know what that meant at the time. He explained that there's a tech being quietly developed. AI-based facial cloning mixed with deep fake video mapping. Basically, they can project a living, moving replica of someone's face onto another person in real time. It's supposed to be used for undercover ops or simulations, but he said only a few government labs even have the prototypes. which meant whoever was behind this had access to experimental level tech. I remember whispering, "Why show us that?" He didn't answer right away. Then he said, "It's a message, a warning, that they could reach us anywhere, and we'd never know who was real." We decided to leave immediately, packed whatever we had, 2 duffel bags and a burner laptop Matt had salvaged. We paid in cash, used the back exit, and hit the road before sunrise. He'd managed to contact Rick's supposed Montana connection, someone who went by Cole, through an encrypted relay. Cole replied with GPS coordinates and one line: "Trust no signal. Come silent." We drove straight west for hours, avoiding highways, tossing every phone or traceable device we found. I felt like I was living inside a nightmare that wouldn't end. At every gas stop, I caught myself scanning faces, looking for people watching us. About a day into the drive, Matt started coughing badly. His fever had gotten worse since the night of the cabin. We stopped at a pharmacy in some small Ohio town so I could grab antibiotics. I left him in the car for 10 minutes. When I came back, he was gone. The passenger door was open, the engine still running. His bag was on the seat, but his wallet was gone. I looked around the parking lot, yelling his name, but it was empty. Just a kid pumping gas and an old couple walking their dog. Nobody saw him leave. I ran inside, asked the cashier if anyone matching his description came in. She said no. That's when I noticed the reflection in the security mirror above the counter. 2 men in dark jackets standing by the edge of the parking lot. They weren't looking at me directly, but both had earpieces. I walked out like nothing was wrong, then slipped around the side of the building and ran. I didn't stop until I was 2 blocks away, hid behind a dumpster, trying not to throw up. My whole body was shaking. I tried calling Matt's burner, but it rang once, then cut to a dead tone. I waited there for maybe an hour, until the men left in a black SUV. When I went back, the car was gone too. Everything, his stuff, my ID, the cash we'd stashed in the glove compartment, gone. I was alone. I don't even remember how I got to the next town. I must have walked for hours before finding an all-night diner. I sat in a corner booth, just blank. The waitress must have thought I was drunk or strung out. She asked if I was okay. I told her my friend got sick and I lost him on the road. She nodded like she'd heard it before and brought me coffee on the house. I'll never forget that small kindness. It grounded me for a minute. But then I looked up and saw the news on the TV above the counter. A car crash on Route 64. The vehicle burned out, unrecognizable. The newscaster said 2 men were presumed dead, though DNA testing was still pending. The car looked exactly like ours. I just sat there, gripping the edge of the table, staring at that wreck. When I finally left the diner, I felt something shift inside me. Fear turned into something else. Resolve, maybe. If they'd already decided I was dead, that was my window. I hitched rides under fake names, paid cash, and avoided cameras as best I could. I slept in bus stations, cheap motels, even a storage unit once. It took me 3 days to reach the Montana border. When I got there, I followed the GPS coordinates Cole had sent. It led me deep into forested backroads, past what looked like abandoned logging sites. The deeper I went, the less my radio picked up. No static, no signal, nothing. Eventually, I found a small cabin nestled between the pines, smoke curling from the chimney. I knocked once. A man opened the door, a tall, rugged guy in his 50s with sharp eyes and a scar down his neck. "You must be Rick's friend," he said. I nodded, though I didn't know what to say. He waved me in. The cabin looked lived in but strange. Maps on the walls, radio transmitters, an old-school ham rig, stacks of files with code numbers. Cole poured me coffee and said, "I heard about what happened. Rick didn't make it." I asked how he knew. He just gave me a look that said he had his own ways. Then he told me something I wasn't ready for. Rick was part of it once. Project Blackbird. He defected years ago when he saw what they were turning it into. That's why he helped you. But if they used his face on that feed, it means they've rebuilt the system. Blackbird's fully operational again. I asked him what that meant, and he said, "It means they've gone global. Facial replication, psychological conditioning, digital erasure, it's all live now. You're not the first target, but you might be the last one who can still expose them." I didn't even know how to respond. I just stared into my coffee while he explained that he'd been tracking leaks for years, collecting data from people like me who vanished after touching classified files. He had proof: hard drives, decrypted files, even intercepted transmissions linking Blackbird operatives to multiple countries. He said, "If we can upload this evidence before they find us, it'll force their hand. They can't hide forever." But there was fear in his voice too, like he'd tried this before and failed. That night, I lay awake on the couch, listening to the wind outside. Every shadow looked like movement. Every gust sounded like static, and I couldn't shake the feeling that if they knew where I was, they wouldn't just come for me this time. They'd come to finish the cleanup. I didn't sleep that night. Every creak of the wood, every gust of wind outside the cabin, it all sounded like footsteps. Cole had given me an old revolver to keep near the couch, said it was just in case. I kept it beside me, hand resting on the grip, eyes locked on the door until morning light crept in through the cracks. When Cole finally came back from wherever he'd gone before dawn, he looked exhausted but wired. He'd been transmitting packets through what he called a cold relay, some old satellite bounce that bypassed modern monitoring grids. "They'll pick up on it eventually," he said, "but we've got maybe a 12-hour window." He opened a case on the table, 3 hard drives, each labeled with different years: 2019, 2020, 2022. He said these drives contained full logs of Blackbird transmissions, internal communications between private contractors, military subcontractors, and at least 2 foreign intelligence agencies. If half of what he said was true, it would blow the lid off one of the most secretive surveillance operations in U.S. history. The plan was simple: transmit copies to several dark web drop points and one public whistleblower platform through a proxy network. Once it was out, it couldn't be erased. But to do it safely, we'd need to access a fiber connection, something fast enough to push several terabytes before detection. There was a problem, though. The nearest fiber node was 60 miles away, in a town called Darby. Cole said we'd have to risk it. We left just before noon. He drove an old pickup, beat to hell but sturdy. The whole way, I watched the tree lean, expecting black SUVs to roll out at any second. But the road stayed empty, the silence thick enough to choke on. Cole didn't talk much, just stared straight ahead, eyes flicking to the rearview mirror every few minutes. After an hour, he said, "You know, you could still walk away. Forget this. Start over somewhere. They think you're dead." I thought about that. About disappearing. Changing my name again. Maybe moving to some quiet town out west. Getting a job that didn't involve firewalls or data. But then I remembered Matt. And Rick. And every other person who'd vanished. "No," I said. "If I stop now, they win." He nodded once, like he'd expected that answer. We reached Darby around sunset. The town was small, one main street, a diner, and a couple of service buildings. Cole parked behind a laundromat and pulled a thick cable from a tool bag. We broke into a maintenance door around back and found the junction box. He hooked up his relay, fingers moving fast, eyes scanning the terminal. For the first time in days, I felt something like hope. Like maybe, just maybe, this was going to end. Then the lights flickered. "Shit," Cole muttered. "They found us." Outside, the sound of engines, 3, maybe 4 vehicles, rolling fast down the street. "Keep it going," he said. "No matter what." I watched the progress bar crawl across the screen. 32%, 44%, 58%. My heart was pounding so hard I could barely breathe. Cole pulled out his gun and moved to the window. "Get ready to run." The first shot shattered the front glass. Cole fired back instantly. The screen blinked, upload still running. 72%. He shouted, "Go? Take the drives." I grabbed them, stuffed them in my backpack, and ducked toward the back exit. Another round hit the wall above my head. I heard Cole yell something, then silence. I didn't look back. I ran through the alley behind the laundromat, cutting across side streets until I hit the edge of town. There was a freight yard nearby, a long line of cargo trains idling. I jumped the fence, found an open boxcar, and climbed in. I sat there in the dark, shaking, trying to catch my breath. My hands were slick with blood. I didn't even know if it was mine or Cole's. The train started moving. Slow at first, then faster. I don't know where it was headed, and I didn't care. I just needed distance. I checked the drives. They were intact. I pulled out Cole's burner laptop, booted it up, and opened the terminal. The upload progress had stopped at 83%. Not enough, but the partial data was still there. Logs, messages, even some video snippets, enough to prove Blackbird existed. I hid the drives under a false floor panel in the boxcar, wrapped in plastic. If they caught me, at least the evidence would survive. Hours passed. The train clattered through the night, and I finally drifted off. When I woke up, the sky was pale gray, the mountains in the distance glowing in dawn light. I checked my reflection in the metal wall. I barely recognized myself. Dark circles, beard growth, eyes hollowed out. Then I heard something. A faint static hiss. Coming from the laptop. The terminal flashed. A message appeared, line by line. Unknown user. You shouldn't have done that. I froze. Typed back. Who is this? Unknown user. You're already erased. Just accept it. Then the screen went black. The laptop overheated, hissed, and shut off completely. Smoke curled from the vent. I threw it out the door of the moving train. Watched it smash against the rocks below. Now I'm writing this from a library computer somewhere in Idaho. I don't even know what town this is. I walked for miles after jumping off that train. I've been using public Wi-Fi, never the same place twice. Every few days, I check for signs, news leaks, whistleblower drops, but nothing yet. Either they stopped the upload, or someone buried it deep. But here's the part that keeps me up. Yesterday, I walked into a small diner just to get out of the rain. The waitress smiled at me and said, "Coffee like usual?" I'd never been there before. I asked her what she meant, and she laughed. "You come in here every morning, Han. Don't tell me you forgot." I just smiled and nodded, but my hands were shaking. When I went to the bathroom, I looked in the mirror, and for a second, I swear my reflection lagged. Like the image on a video call with bad connection. That's when I realized maybe they didn't kill me. Maybe they replaced me. Maybe the version of me walking around this town every morning isn't me at all. I don't know how much longer I have before they finish whatever process they started. But if anyone's reading this, if you ever find a hidden camera or notice something small and off, like your reflection glitching, your screen flashing static for no reason, don't ignore it. You're not paranoid. They're watching. And when you finally notice them, it's already too late. If you made it all the way to the end, thanks for sticking with me. I really appreciate it. If you enjoyed the story, consider subscribing to the channel and giving the video a like. It helps me share more stories like this. Thanks.